All right, welcome everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into some crucial tax info, especially after those SoCal wildfires and crazy winds starting January 7th.
Oh yeah, the IRS just dropped this announcement, IR 2025-10.
Right, and we're going to break down what it all means for you, if you were affected. It's not just about
Yeah,
extensions.
I know.
There's some seriously helpful stuff in here, like about claiming losses, even maybe getting to your retirement funds early.
It's really interesting, actually. The IRS is kind of acknowledging with this announcement that, like, dealing with a
Right
disaster
there.
shouldn't also mean dealing with tax stress on top of it.
For sure. So, first things first, who does all this apply to?
So the IRS is working with FEMA to figure out which areas are officially, disaster zones for this.
Right.
As of today, Los Angeles County is the main one.
Okay, so if I'm in LA County, I'm good.
Yeah.
What if I'm in, like, Ventura County? That got hit hard, too.
That's where it gets tricky. They might add more counties later, so
Totally.
best thing is to keep checking the IRS website.
Okay.
They've got a page specifically for tax relief in disaster situations. It'll get updated.
Gotcha, bookmarking that right now. So, assuming I am in one of those areas, what kind of relief are we talking about?
Okay, well, for starters, imagine like a giant pause button on all your tax deadlines.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them have been pushed to October 15th, 2025.
Whoa, okay, specifics. What exactly gets moved?
Think of it this way. If you had any tax deadline, anything at all, between January 7th and October 15th this year,
Mm,
it's probably moved to October 15th.
mm.
So that means your individual income tax return, IRA contributions, even those quarterly estimated payments, ugh.
Right.
And yeah, some business deadlines too.
So that April 15th thing I usually stress over is, like, gone for now.
Exactly. The IRS gets it. After a disaster, like the last thing you want to think about is gathering all your tax stuff.
Dang.
They're trying to cut people some slack.
Okay, that's huge. What about missed payments, though? Were there still penalties even with the extensions?
There's one deadline that didn't budge. Got to be quick on this. They're waiving penalties for missed payroll and excise tax deposits.
Okay.
But only if those were due between January 7th and the 22nd. You got to make those deposits by the 22nd, no exceptions.
Got it. So if I'm a business and miss a deposit, like last week, got to pay ASIP to avoid penalties.
Exactly. Super short window, but could save you a lot of headache later.
Makes sense. Okay, so to get this relief, what do? Call the IRS, forms, carrier pigeon.
Good news is probably nothing. If the IRS already has your address and it's in the disaster area, they'll just do it automatically.
No way. Seriously, they just
Yeah.
handle it. What if I just moved to LA after filing my taxes last year?
That's a good question.
Ah.
Yeah, you might get a penalty notice by mistake because their system won't know you're eligible yet. But don't panic. Just call the number on the notice, explain, they'll fix it.
Wow. So even if I moved after the fires started, I could still qualify. Had no idea.
Absolutely. And here's another one, maybe not as obvious. Say you live outside the disaster zone, but all your tax records, receipts, W-2s, all that were inside.
Oh, wow.
And they're gone now.
So even if I'm physically, like, not in LA County, but my tax stuff got destroyed, I can still get relief?
That's right. IRS is being pretty flexible here. For this one, you got to call them directly, 866-562-5227.
Writing that down. Anything else about calling them I should know?
Oh, one more thing, especially if you're like a tax preparer, you can make bulk requests for your clients so everyone saves time.
Oh, that's smart. Okay, so far, this is all pretty straightforward. But let's get to the stuff that's, well, more complex, but maybe more helpful, claiming losses. Now, this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, claiming losses after a disaster, it can be pretty overwhelming.
Right.
But it's also where some like serious tax benefits can be. And the IRS actually gives you choices here.
Okay.
That flexibility can be a really good thing.
So I can choose how to claim these losses. What are the options?
Exactly. You can claim them on your 2024 return, the one you probably already filed,
Right.
or you can wait and put them on your 2025 return. So you pick the year where it helps you out most, tax-wise.
So I could, like, amend my 2024 return to include this stuff. What kind of losses are we even talking about here?
We're talking about stuff insurance didn't cover, or if you weren't reimbursed some other way. Damage to your house, your things, your car even, it can all count.
So say a tree fell on my roof in the windstorm, and insurance only covered half the repairs. Could I claim the rest?
Exactly. Or like your car got flooded and you didn't have that comprehensive coverage, right?
Yeah.
Another loss you could claim.
Okay, this is making sense, but how do I actually calculate this? Like, do I need an appraiser to come out and tell me how much everything's worth?
There are IRS guidelines for how to figure out that deductible amount,
Right.
and it can get kind of technical, honestly.
Okay.
But the good news is you don't need to have it all figured out right now.
Wait, seriously. So I can choose the year, and I don't need all the numbers yet.
You got it. You've got until October 15th, 2026 to decide. That's 6 whole months after the 2025 deadline. So plenty of time to figure out your whole financial picture and maybe talk to a tax pro if you need to.
Okay, that takes some pressure off. Phew. Definitely marking that date on my calendar. Anything else I absolutely need to know about claiming these losses?
Don't forget to put that FEMA declaration number on your return when you claim the losses. It's 4856DR.
Okay.
That just lets the IRS know which disaster you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you really want to dive deep into those calculations, there's publication 547
Got it.
called Casualties, Disasters, and Thefts. It's got all the nitty-gritty.
Publication 547 noted.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears to those disaster relief payments. You said money from government agencies for, like, disaster expenses isn't usually taxable income. That seems almost too good to be true. Are there any catches?
That's a good question. Yeah, there are a few specifics, like payments for lost wages, unemployment benefits.
Yeah.
Those are still taxable income. It's about what the payment's for, really.
So if it's for living expenses, home repairs, medical stuff because of the disaster, that's probably tax-free. But money that's like replacing my paycheck, that's still taxed.
Exactly.
You got it. Okay, this all leads to something I think a lot of folks are worried about right now, especially with money being tight after a disaster like this, retirement funds.
Right. We mentioned those special rules about taking money out of your retirement plans and IRAs without penalty because of the disaster.
Yeah.
Definitely something worth talking about more.
This is where it gets tricky, right? Because we're always told, don't touch your retirement savings. But in this situation, it might be necessary.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. It's about balancing your long-term goals with what you need right now. The good news is these disaster-related distributions, they usually don't get hit with that 10% penalty for taking money out early, if you're under 59 and a half.
But that's big. But you said before, each plan's got its own rules. What are some key questions I should ask my plan administrator?
Well, first off, just make sure your plan even offers these disaster distributions. Not all of them do. Then find out exactly what proof you need.
Okay.
Maybe proof you lived in the disaster zone, insurance statements showing what they didn't cover, that kind of stuff.
So don't just assume I can get to this money. Got to check with them first. What about taxes on this, though? If I take a distribution, am I going to get slammed with a huge tax bill?
Yeah, you can skip the early withdrawal penalty, but the money itself is still taxable income. The IRS does have some options, though.
Okay.
You can spread the income out over 3 years for tax purposes. That can help.
Spreading it out like that could definitely make it easier. Anything else I should keep in mind if I'm thinking about using my retirement funds?
Think really hard about whether this is truly your last resort. Remember, this money's for your future. If you take it out now, it's not going to be growing for you anymore.
That's a really good point. Don't panic and raid the retirement account right away. Explore other options first.
Exactly. See what government programs are out there. Maybe look into low-interest loans, anything like that.
Okay, good strategy. So we've covered claiming losses, those disaster relief payments, even dipping into retirement early if we have to. But there's still the whole process of actually filing my taxes and, like, what if all my tax stuff is gone? Are there any resources for that?
Absolutely. There's some amazing free help out there for dealing with taxes, especially after something like this.
Free help? Tell me more. We could all use some of that right now. Free help with taxes, seriously. After all this stuff we just talked about, what kind of resources are we talking about?
So there's VITA, that's the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program.
Okay.
And then there's TCE, which is tax counseling for the elderly. Both of those offer free help if you qualify.
So I can get, like, actual help from a real person for free. What's the catch?
Well, most VITA sites, they don't usually deal with the really complicated stuff like those disaster loss claims.
Right.
So for that, you might still need a tax pro.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any free stuff for just filing online, though? I figure all my records are digital these days anyway.
If your AGI, your adjusted gross income, is under $84,000, you can use IRS Free File. It's all online, pretty easy to use, walks you right through it.
Free file. Okay, what about military folks, though? Anything specific for us?
Oh, for sure. MilTax is a great one. They've got free software and support for service members and some veterans, too.
Wow, so much free help out there. It's good to know there's support, when things feel this overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. We've covered a ton of info today, but I think there's a bigger takeaway here beyond just the deadlines and forms and all that.
What do you mean?
We talk about a lot of practical steps, right? But the bigger question for you listening is this. With all these options for claiming losses, managing your money, even using retirement funds if you have to, what actually makes the most sense for you, for your specific situation?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not like one size fits all, right? I got to figure out what works for me with what I've got going on. And honestly, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by it all, even with all this helpful info. What's the best way to approach all this to make sure I'm doing the right things?
First thing, just breathe. It's easy to feel panicked after something like this, but try to think clearly about your finances. Then take stock of where you're at. What do you need right now? What resources are already available to you? Maybe start with a budget just to help you track your spending, prioritize
Yeah,
things.
a budget. It's about getting some control back, even when everything feels crazy. What else can I do?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to family, friends, people in your community, maybe even a financial advisor. If there are folks who want to help, they can give you support and advice.
Asking for help is hard, though, you know? It feels like I should be able to handle this myself.
It's okay to ask for help.
Right.
Don't forget about how all this affects you, like emotionally. It's not just about the money, it's about taking care of yourself, mentally and emotionally too.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of weeks, that's for sure. What are some ways to deal with all that stress?
Maybe find a support group, talk to a therapist, even just a trusted friend. Getting those feelings out is just as important as figure out the money stuff.
This whole deep dive has been so helpful. I feel like I understand so much more about what I can do, about the resources that are out there, and kind of what my next steps are.
And remember, this is just the start. Things are changing all the time, so stay informed. Keep checking the IRS website, your local community groups, and don't be afraid to reach out to those pros, for guidance.
You've given me a lot to think about today. Thank you so much for helping me figure all this out. It's complicated.
You're very welcome. And remember, you are not alone in this. There's help out there, people care, and there is a way forward. Stay informed, stay connected, and stay hopeful.
That's a perfect way to end this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive into tax relief after the SoCal wildfires. We'll be back soon with more topics that matter to you. Until then.